Hello and welcome to the Smartest Moron, where we're still keeping this format because, well, I want to experiment. Also, it shouldn't surprise you, but the sequel to Raidou Kuzunoha vs. the Soulless Army, holy mother of god, this game is so much fucking better. Like, seriously, damn near every complaint I had about the first game was addressed. Better gameplay, better story with better characters, and just overall a superior product. I'm actually surprised I didn't replay this one a ton considering how many cycles I went through on the first Raidou game. But there's a reason for that. This game was released around the time I was heading into college, and the next generation of console wars was heating up, as the PS3 released 2 years before this game. At the time, I was already digging into the Xbox 360 library with games like Devil May Cry 4 and Mass Effect. Surprisingly, in 2009 we got the second Raidou game, and I was convinced we weren't because of not just the whole console wars, but Japan also keeping some titles to themselves. Japan also got a manga set after this game which followed Raidou in a few stories, like with Nagi officially becoming a true devil summoner, and many more. Unfortunately, only a few chapters were translated by fans before the project was scrapped. They also got a re-release of Nocturne which replaced Dante with Raidou Kuzunoha. Fortunately, this particular game was actually given a translation, and I will be talking a bit about it. Might as well at this point, as I will never be able to get this in English outside of emulation. My copy of the game also came with a plush of Raiho back then, who you could recruit in this and the previous title after fulfilling certain conditions. And despite my fears that I was going to have to part with my PS2, well, clearly that hasn't been the case. I mean, look at Shadow Hearts for crying out loud. And one day, Wild Arms. One day you will be played after buying you 4 years ago. Yeah, if you ever start channels for the love of all humanity, just do not buy every single game you see. It's a problem I'm still addressing right now. Anyway, let's dive into Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner, Raidou Kuzunoha vs. King Abaddon. Maybe we don't see more of these games thanks to the long-ass titles. So how exactly does this game improve over the original? Well, for starters, the combat is much faster than before, as Raidou can now do dodge rolls and backflips. Demons also move faster too, zooming around kinda DBZ style, meaning some need to be halted by your gun in order to be damaged by your sword. Raidou's control scheme has also changed, so jumping from the previous game may actually cause some confusion, like say wanting to block, but instead rolling into attacks. His mechanics have also changed a lot since the previous games too. For starters, that gun of yours, it cannot be given new elemental bullets. What you have is pretty much what you're going to be rocking for the rest of the game. And your sword strikes are also a bit more limited too. Technically, you still have the thrust and radial slash, but you can't just use that move automatically. They are just part of the combo and cannot be controlled. To compensate for this, you're given a heavy attack that changes depending on what kind of sword you have. While your gun can't be customized, the sword can, and it's split between 3 weapons: the spear, the sword, and the axe. You know, maybe that Fire Emblem crossover would have worked way better if Raidou was chosen to base a spin-off of, instead of Persona. The spear offers the lowest attack, but makes up for it thanks to their special move being more focused with a rapid flurry of stabs, which helped me a ton in boss battles, and it also stuns enemies too sometimes. The sword is more balanced, allowing an area slash to hit multiple foes, though I didn't have too much use for it since I never quite got the same kind of flow as the spear. And the axe offers the highest attack power, but its special move is slow and you need time to hit the move just right. Yet it also has a wider effect too in order to strike multiple foes. Some of these swords can even come with helpful passives through the use of upgrades, and that may be more valuable than the actual attack power. And given how many base swords you get, you can create quite an impressive armory made for any occasion. Although I actually rarely used the upgrade system due to lacking materials and got some of the best swords through some quests. Well, that, and they can get ridiculously expensive. Now, before you pick up the game and spam enemies with these cool ass attacks, you have to pay attention to one new thing: Magnetite. Well, I mean, technically it isn't new. In the previous game, it was used for summoning and fusions only. The sequel, though, decided to make it an MP bar for everyone. As in, you share this with your demons when executing certain skills, meaning it is possible to run out and kinda be in trouble if you do not manage this right. And since you can now have up to 2 demons on the field at once, you gotta command them a bit better, especially when facing tougher foes and not just spamming magic all day. And you heard that right, you can now have up to 2 demon allies on the battlefield. Due to some technique, Gato decides now is a good time to teach Raidou. You know, as opposed to the last game against the giant robot made of death and hatred. He can now call forth 2 demons at the same time in battles. Though he does mention it causes a strain, so I'm just wondering just how dangerous it is if he tries summoning a ton of demons like in the game's intro. That cannot be good for him. It looks like we're in a hell of a pickle. His waifus are just way too strong. I have no choice then. I'll have to summon the full arsenal of demons. Holy shit, Raidou, no! For the love of Mara, stop! It's too late. Now prepare yourself for the end. No, seriously, you should never do that. The effects are devastating. Oh, good God. What the hell happened to him? This doesn't seem possible. Raidou, this is why Persona is more popular than us. So, what are you doing later? Dante, for the love of crap, we talked about this. I'm so freaking lonely, damn it. The good news keeps on rolling, as now demons can have more than 2 skills at once, able to have a wide arsenal of spells and techniques that are all valuable. Though you can only bring in 5 skills into a fight. Hell, there are moves that cost a lot of magnetite, but allow Raidou to actually enhance his sword and gun, sometimes even performing special moves that pause combat. While it's not as overpowered as the techniques in the last game, some are essential for Raidou to be more active in a fight. Now normally MP can be restored with items, but not so in this game, or at the very least those items are extremely limited. Aside from going to rest stops to recover magnetite, you need to find a spell an enemy is weak against, and once they're hit, you beat the crap out of them like a frickin' piñata. Now you might have some concerns over bosses given how they may not even have a weakness to exploit, leaving you fearful of using magic. To an extent that is worrisome, especially the final boss. But some fights actually give you more magnetite depending on how much health the boss loses, and it can sometimes go up over time. Plus they don't all feel like sponges that soak up the damage, except again, the final boss. In fact, despite my warning of how you may need to be wise with your demons in order to just not spend all the magnetite at once, depending on how powerful they are, they can actually take down some bosses pretty damn quickly. The camera is also significantly better, although it is still kinda easy to get lost in, especially when you have bigger demons. The area is much wider, and while you can't see everything on the screen, it is easy and fast to go through menus and try to turn the battle in your own favor. Some spells even behave differently, like with some stat spells being more focused on being cast around the caster as opposed to a straight line, so that way you're just not hit off screen. And it's much more relieving than the previous game, as I can now see the Petra spell coming much easier. And unlike the last game, some death spells can one-hit kill you if you lack resistance to death magic, so be extremely careful when you see that freaking rectangle. Sadly, the game also suffers from slowdown sometimes due to all this chaos, usually when a weakness is struck to multiple enemies at once. Not a deal breaker for this game, but still a tad annoying. And yes, even fusion is now better than ever. Back then you had to backtrack all the way to Victor's place, but now, so long as you complete a certain side quest anyway, that is no longer the case. As soon as you get your first casing completed, you can now teleport from save points to the Goma Den and get to fusing ASAP. Admittedly, it doesn't make much sense when these ninjas kidnap you and put you into another realm, but I'll take what I can get. You also no longer need to have max loyalty either to fuse demons, although you might wish to do it anyway for the sake of passives. The more times a demon is fused, the more passive slots they'll eventually have, and if you keep raising their loyalty, they'll keep gaining more benefits like more health, bonus stats, resistance to elements, you get the idea. And the best part about all this is that unlike attack skills, these are not randomized. So your demons can be damn good. Hell, even if you don't use those certain passives, they'll be available later for that specific demon. This even made me think twice about fusing certain demons, as you could gain extra benefits, like giving more magic to a demon that is good at using spells and having them nuke the battlefield. Depending on how many fusions you have done, Victor will even offer special experiments to help either enhance the demon, like say give it more passive slots, though there are limits, or even better, use into demons that you wouldn't get through normal means. Some of the ones I've gotten surpassed my level cap. Sadly, they didn't learn any of the skills of the other demons, but made up for it by still being able to retain the previous passive skills. Plus, there are technically ways around that. Recruiting demons, though, has changed quite a bit, returning to familiar areas in other SMT games, as you must converse and negotiate with the demons, like sparing their lives or trying to gain their favor. Your other demons can also help with this, each of them possessing a trait that can make things easier, sometimes even combining their powers to make things go way better. By far one of my favorite skills was Sweet Talk, which can affect those of the opposite gender. However, this is also an SMT game, where this aspect can easily make one frustrated when the demon suddenly decides it's not in the mood to join your team no matter how good you are. Not an impossible one, mind you, but annoying. One neat thing is that some demons can interfere with conversations, all bring up some unique dialogue that can actually force negotiations to end. That can sometimes be annoying as well, but it's fun to see little conversations here and there. And if you have the same type of demon as the one commonly found around the area, some battles may not even occur and you can gain some loot for your troubles too. Though I imagine that would get annoying during a grinding session, especially when you'll sometimes talk to them just for them to let you go and gain nothing. While solo mode is still a thing, you cannot run into random encounters this time. However, what they replaced it with, well, I suppose someone must have loved mashing buttons, because some areas will have these rock thingies that require you to randomly swap out demons and mash the X button, and no, I don't care that it's now the cross button. Eat me. And pray to God you can destroy the rock while the demon's HP is sapped away. The rock can also regenerate HP over time, so you better pray you have not become an old man at this point. Fortunately, I didn't find too many of these. In fact, the level design is honestly better here than in the first game, as it relies less on the Dark World, which was basically a small palette change to an area and a few unpassable walls. As such, this does mean more varied areas and better puzzles to go along with everything, and emphasizing the need to have a more varied roster to take down such obstacles. And if you do need a certain demon, it's likely in that area, or you can go to a save point and fuse the demon type you need easily. Just wish the shop was accessible too, since I was hurting for cash at times to create a better army of monsters. Some puzzles were just literal walls though, involving those rocks like I told you about, while others, well, only two really made me confused. Like this one riddle involving Raidou and his demon needing to move to the opposing sides of the area. I never would have guessed that on my own, and funny enough, that was the same kind of puzzle used in gaining access to bonus items in the final dungeon within Game 1. The other one requires talking to 4 characters while moving Tay around to talk to other people. Just look up a guide when you get to this part, it will save you a massive headache. Another thing to watch out for this time is your luck. Due to the story of the game, Raidou can find himself very unlucky, and this actually has a great effect on the combat. This is extremely important because randomly, you will get luck roulettes that can grant some neat benefits, or some nasty side effects. I hate the fricking whip sword. You do have a counter though. Luck Locusts. Simply having them caged up can boost the luck stat, but using them also allows you to counter some bad luck too. Unfortunately, along with the luck roulette being random, they can also be lost if ambushed, and this is where we get to perhaps my least favorite mechanic, force damage. Despite having a bigger and better combat system, they felt the need to randomly have Raidou take on force damage from enemies. And these bastards can hit a lot too, even if they are severely weaker than Raidou. Between this, the special locks, and a few other factors, it's no wonder they lifted a limit of some items from 9 to 12 and beyond. Still, given how many times I've died in this game, it doesn't feel like an endurance test like Final Fantasy XV did. Side quests are also much more abundant. Not every single task involves a story, as they are mostly just finding and exchanging items. But there is some story flow up to the others, like listening to the angry ramblings of a demon turned into a maid, or the giant turtle monster that is kinda clumsy with precious magical items that nearly killed me. Fun times. Finding them, on the other hand, is not so obvious. The game's recommendation was a Devil Summoner bar to get some case files, but you can obtain them from certain characters, like those you met and saved in the story, or by visiting characters from the previous games. I actually missed out on quite a few of these, and some are necessary for later story progression, or to make life easier. Even some demons may put in a request if you ended up talking to them during a fight. Although what's very annoying is that despite accepting a case file from a client right in front of you, you have to go all the way back to the detective agency, accept the quest, and then go all the way back to the same person who just gave you the damn mission in the first place. I can understand maybe filing it there so you can take care of it later, but this entire process was inconvenient. Also, don't expect too much story from these either, but the challenge with some are nice, though with stuff like Raiho, expect a lot of pain thanks to his ridiculous ice spell. That being said, I want to use that one. Although speaking of pains in the asses, well... For fans of Nocturne, you might recognize the appearance of the Fiends. For those unfamiliar with that game, the Fiends are a race of extraordinarily powerful demons that all serve Lucifer. Taking on just one of these guys is a major challenge for nearly anyone, despite the range in their levels. You'll know exactly when one is close, but your chances to prepare are slim, and you'll likely be under-leveled for the encounter. They are not impossible to defeat, and beating them even grants the ability to fuse them later on. Granted, the fusion process there can be annoying. I ended up retreating from encounters early though, which involves negotiating with them and losing a lot of stuff, so you have to know when to fight or run away. Then they also have their own version of the luck wheel, and if you get disabled items... Oh, you poor person. Beware the Pale Rider specifically though. His physical can turn people to stone and... Well, you all know how I feel about that stat aspect. One thing to keep in mind is your alignment, as it can change certain things in the story, like which demons you encounter in certain places, different side quests, etc. Sadly, the way they decide to determine your alignment is by this character model on the world map just turning a certain direction as opposed to just giving a meter. You can either fall on law, chaos, or neutral depending on the choices made, and you'll get an indicator of the choices mattering when your controller vibrates. Gonna tell you now, while you might gain some quests in law, in the end, you don't really get anything. While neutral and chaos offer the best rewards with bonus bosses on your next playthrough and new swords. However, there is still a heavy bias for chaos, as in order to fight the secret boss on neutral, you need to get more of the quests done, meaning you gotta double dip in the other alignments. So overall, despite some problems here and there, this game feels way more fun to play and has a lot more replay value. But is the story superior? Let's get cracking on that story section right now. The story this time actually takes a bit of time to set up, introducing a trial for Raidou as he has to prove himself to the followers of Yatagarasu, again, and even has Gato return in the form of a cat since he died in the first game. It was hinted that he did return as a bird at the end of that game, but to be fair, given what Yatagarasu looks like in the SMT series, it could have just been him watching over Raidou. Or maybe Gato did return as a bird just to die again and he's too embarrassed to admit it, who knows. After passing the trial and learning a few new tricks like dual summoning, he is once again partnered with Narumi, and just in time too, as various people seem to be experiencing varying degrees of good and bad luck. After being given the job of hunting a man down for the mysterious new lady Akane, and after Narumi is done drooling over what I assume was a shitload of cash, they eventually discover the cause of the misfortune befalling the capital, with Raidou himself eventually cursed with enough bad luck that the fiend demons now want a piece of him. Also, he faces his worst enemy yet, banana peels. Like, seriously, this happens a lot. Chasing this mystery eventually leads to an encounter with ninjas carrying mysterious bugs capable of sapping the good luck from people, and also the antagonist, Dahn, can enact some plan that involves Akane, and going deeper into that is major spoiler territory. While some ninjas seemingly aren't out to kill people, they are still causing harm, and enough so that certain powerful demons keep popping up, so it's up to Raidou and the gang to stop them. It's eventually revealed that the ninja are part of something much bigger, and not everything is quite so black and white with the situation, particularly when it comes to Dahn himself and some of the new characters like Raidou Kuzunoha the 17th. As I said before, compared to the first game, the plot takes a while to build up on. Despite having fewer chapters than Game 1, these are a lot meatier and take longer to complete, especially when you factor in some of the side quests. Some elements of the story kinda do a better job than the previous game too, such as the struggle between Raidou Kuzunoha and the previous antagonist, where that was kinda pushed towards the finale of the game, versus the conflict Dahn has with his family. This sequel does a better job of keeping things beyond black and white right from the start, as every side has a decent argument in mind, so you can't see many people as pure malicious evil. Well, if you ignore Dan's evil grins anyway, which I think are meant to look more cocky given his personality. Having Raidou weakened for this game, I have mixed feelings on this, although I think defining the power structure might have been for the best, like why Raidou has to be powered down all the way to level 1, as I'm left only relying on theories. At the very least, given the training ground scene in the game, it seems the summoners do have to part with their demons to keep creating those trials and places to train. I also love how this does show that in these situations, Raidou needs to have more brains than brawn given how these ninja are able to trap him in illusions and drain his luck to render him inept in combat. Brute force is simply not going to cut it in many of these situations, and I appreciate characters being forced to think, especially in a game where you work at a detective agency. While the first game seemed more focused on themes over its actual characters, this sequel tries to balance both to create a terrific narrative that easily trumps the first game. If you're concerned about diving into this title with little knowledge about some characters from the previous game, you don't have to worry too much. Aside from Narumi and Tei, they rarely appear and serve as cameos for the most part, leaving it pretty easy to dive right in. And if you ever feel lost in the story, there are plenty of tools to help you out, like Gato taking notes on certain subjects. Narumi also holds meetings to help piece together evidence in case you feel lost in the story or haven't played for a long time. Like say, I don't know, being forced to play Fire Emblem Three Houses just to have some meaningful interactions with your friends and to prevent yourself from feeling lonely. Plus Gato can always recall certain events at the beginning of each chapter, though I'm not sure why they had to structure it like this, talking in a black void. It feels like I'm watching one of those sitcoms where they have to talk to the camera while other stuff is going on, only played seriously. As for the alignment system itself, the effects it has on the story aren't too big. There is also a change in the finale, but aside from that and quests, the changes are kinda minimal. The reason is related to the theme of the game, as it tries to dive into personal feelings versus the duty someone has to, or feels they have to uphold, like with Raidou's job, although given the rewards in each route, the game heavily focuses on the chaos alignment. But that involves talking about some heavy spoilers, so let's get to that ASAP. So what is one of the twists exactly? I'm sure by now most of you can already predict sacrifice to appease the gods, and Akane was serving that role. Well, you are half right, as there is a bit more to it. Let me put it this way. This is what happened to the last fiancé. they are left in a state that they couldn't even show in an M-rated game. Let that sit in your mind, as this is also the same game that has a penis demon on a chariot that keeps making sexual innuendos. Basically, the daughters of the Tsukigata clan are serving as a breeder to these insect beings called Tento. Dahn even explains how everyone did get along at some point till the bugmen were driven underground, because human beings are kinda assholes and judge things based on their looks. Granted, the personalities of the Tento aren't exactly what I call pleasant either, though at the same time stick me underground and I would get reasonably pissed too. The arrangement is a trade. See, the ninja known as the Pukoshi requires certain tools to get the job done, i.e. the luck locus. Without them and the other giant bugs they use, their livelihood would likely wither and die since the village doesn't exactly have much going for it beyond a hot spring. It's a lot easier to see their line of thinking when comparing their tools to the demons Raidou uses. If there were suddenly, say, a rare material Raidou needed for his tubes to seal and use demons, and that suddenly was being held for ransom by the makers of it, his line of work would be vastly more limited without the proper tools necessary to do the job. Even Dahn, for as much as he loves his sister, does value the village and seeks to free her while making sure they can all keep getting luck locusts. The problem occurs when the situation just becomes a large game of hot potato, always shoving the issues onto someone else to solve things for a time, leaving the other person to suffer as a result. In this case, Dahn trading the suffering of the Pukoshi and his sister go through for the lives of the people in the capital, or at least ignoring the suffering they are going through to benefit himself. At least to an extent anyway. Hell, Dahn's father can be argued for that too, trying to ignore Akane's misfortune to save the village, though it is later stated that he does indeed care about his daughter and had to force himself to go through with it as the leader. And that's the struggle with the main characters, trying to choose duty or their own personal feelings. The game makes sure that even if one side is taken, that doesn't necessarily mean the person is simply one note. They could just as easily be misguided, not weighing out the benefits, not fully considering the other consequences, or simply not fully understanding a situation. This is reflected in the struggles of many other characters beyond Dahn, such as with Nagi trying to succeed her master while also trying to find her own path given her indecisiveness. Even the main antagonist, Shin Megami, is kinda the same way, split into two different halves that can either try to help Raidou with his duties or drown him in despair. The angry part of Shin Megami in particular feels more like a representation of law, seeing how some people should just accept their place and blaming Dahn for his actions because he went against the rules his clan provided. At the same time, one of the biggest themes emphasized towards the end is the idea of hope and despair, and how some characters can see death as a preferable goal, or to just not have any hope at all. The Tento Lords openly welcome death with open arms, and I remind you that their salvation came from bugs with freaking chainsaw faces. Well, at least that's a cool way to die. While they did technically get some stuff from the Tsukigatas, like a mate to keep up their population, their lives were still not exactly the best, unable to live normal lives like other people, and were simply being used. The song that's special to them shown throughout the game describe how they would sleep at Grandma's bosom, so their only hope in being in a place that accepted them freely seemed to be death. There's also another group of bug people exiled and shunned by the Tento Lords known as the Mushibito. When they are unable to be killed by the other giant bugs, they see nothing left for themselves, and a major blow is dealt to their ego. I mean, imagine living a life so pathetic that the Grim Reaper looks at you and doesn't even want you. It's only when Raidou and Dahn need their help do they have some kind of flicker of hope, only for it to fade away once they realize their job is done. Dahn, of all people, is the one to try and cheer them up, inviting them to travel the world once he and Raidou are done saving the world, and all to try to find their hope in the world. This is hammered into the finale more as you meet characters who are so driven by despair that they see no hope. In the final dungeon, some even blame Raidou as to why they can't have hope for the future, like when he began chasing Dahn in the first place. Both he and Dahn ended up destroying his chances to obtain more luck locusts, ruining any future the village had since they relied on those bugs. Things weren't exactly made easier when the Tento Lords had demanded more beyond just a baby maker, with the villagers' lives made worse as they got poorer, thanks to taxes, and younger people were leaving the village just to find their own future, making life that much harder for the older people. It's only until Dahn uses the crystal that most are able to get back to normal, though things are made worse for Raidou as past people blame him too, their despair so great that it takes on the form of a demon. And not just any demon, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that hunted down Raidou. Now it seems kinda lazy to just put the fiends here as extra bosses to pad out the game, but I kinda find these guys fitting considering they are taking on the form of despair. And let's face it, the apocalypse and seeing the literal 4 horsemen appear before you is enough to lose any kind of hope for a normal person. The only thing I think that could be worse are the Watchers from Drakengard. And yes, I did watch Mr. Klimp's analysis videos on that series, and they serve as a way to try and make Raidou himself feel despair, facing extremely powerful foes that would make anyone lose hope, if I didn't already complete the side quest and was powerful enough to bitch slap them to death anyway. Granted, the Pale Rider still scares the shit out of me. Though as I thought more about the theme, the action some characters were taking, and the urge to die, yeah, this theme is kinda revolving around suicide, and if they can't get what they want or Raidou is interfering, well, some have a desire to kill him. It's why Akane seems so eager to go with Shinato's angry form, as the ritual is basically a death sentence, just one that takes a long ass time and doomed for torture. Raidou entering her life gave her some hope that things could change, along with Dahn trying to save her, but in the end, that too was just taken as Shinato refilled her with that negativity. Even if he hadn't, the anger the villagers held towards Akane and her father was far too massive for her to shoulder alone, and the resentment likely would have lasted for years. I can see a situation where she has to atone for the sake of the villagers for all the wasted years of trying to keep the village stable, and eventually yearn for death, just now trapped in another prison. She didn't even have that much confidence in her abilities to make her own future, and that was the only reason she agreed to the ritual in the first place. Of everyone in this game, Akane was definitely the character who had the most reason to despair. Although I do admit, the one moment where she sacrifices herself to let Raidou pass through and just becomes a giant boss was kinda unnecessary. The same thing going for Shinato's lines as well. She just succumbs to despair yet again, and while the sadder music is fitting, it ultimately means nothing to create needless drama. It actually kinda works better in the law route where Dahn has to sacrifice himself, because at least then it finally gets Akane out of the whole eternal despair thing the story is happy to put her through. Even if this could be undone as the end credits do show the possible return of the sacrificed character, I felt it was needless padding. Also, in all honesty, the last boss wasn't all that great, and terrifying if you never bother to control your magnetite consumption. Don't make the same mistake I did. Raidou Kuzunoha was among one of the first characters I started to notice carrying this theme as well. At first glance, given his attitude and mannerism, you would think this guy's a perfect representation of what a Kuzunoha should be, or at least a type that would suit more of a lawful side. This is mainly in part due to not just the way he carries himself in some scenes, but how he treats his disciple Nagi, trying to uphold the marriage ritual, and even how he treats Raidou at times. However, he acts differently during a certain point in Chapter 6 as he keeps holding Raidou back from helping the capital, and all because of one thing: the ego he is now unable to hide. Throughout the game, there have been signs his body couldn't handle the stress of the job. Not helped when there are insects with frickin' buzzsaws now trying to kill people. Instead of it just being old age, he has tuberculosis, and has lived with it even before Nagi became his pupil, based on an earlier flashback. Combined with how he had a thought about Nagi being a successor and being remembered as a great summoner because of it, his ego has been brewing for quite a while. Hell, when he disciplined Nagi and later talked to Raidou about what she was hoping to achieve, if you answer that she wanted to be like and surpass her master to help him, he actually looks really happy. As his life grew shorter, chances are he saw less of Nagi as his big goal, and kinda grew jealous of Raidou since, let's face it, between the two of them, Raidou seems to possess a lot of bigger feats. But to be fair, it's also hard to top defeating a giant robot made of hatred, and a Kuzunoha from the future. He was so determined and scared of not achieving anything that he pushed Raidou and Nagi away from him, journeying deep into a shrine to take on his predecessors. Had his body not given out, he might have actually won and be able to cast a spell to save the capital, as well as make a contract with the evil demon. Now this might seem stupid, but this is a legitimate fear that extends beyond to something related to this culture. I have seen many people lament at being unable to achieve something great, and as a result think the lives they led were ultimately pointless. And sometimes that line of thinking can easily put certain ideas that are, well, less than helpful. Now, put in a disease that is not curable at that time, and well, yeah, him making the decision to rush off ahead is an understandable one, reckless as it was. And this comes back around to Nagi's own development, as she helps remind Garen that the thing he was meant to accomplish, to create a good devil summoner, was already achieved. He dies, but his mind is put more at ease, and oh god, my Kokoro can't take it. Cut to another character, dammit! Nagi carries this theme as well. As mentioned earlier, she was disciplined by her master. This was because she roped Raidou into the training hall, trying to become stronger without the supervision of her master, leading her to getting in trouble with a strong demon. At this point, her best demon, High Pixie, is killed, and Nagi is left heartbroken at this. Now, demons can be revived, and the game even confirms that High Pixie is brought back at the end due to either magic or a common item, so there are multiple reasons why Nagi is distraught over the death. The first is obviously because the two were good friends, their partnership frequently displayed as such, and Nagi has even expressed a desire to protect and help some demons. The other thing though is her own hope shattering, and it's not helped due to Raidou's victory, and she views herself unworthy as a result. The two are close in age, I think anyway, so the large gap in skill between them likely didn't help her mentality. In fact, the reason she chose not to revive High Pixie was because she wanted to be strong enough to not let her die again. In a way, High Pixie's death was her gateway to despair, as from then on she would keep questioning the lifestyle of a Kuzunoha, while Dahn kept revealing the truth about the marriage proposal. But as I said before, through the death of her master, she was able to rise up and try to attain the title of Raidou Kuzunoha, with his death serving as another moment of inspiration to show her worthiness, even if she is knocked out afterwards. Oh Nagi, I wish you got better fights. Although technically she does get a better moment, at least not involving a KO, where she does aid her master's spirit as Shinano makes him feel despair from beyond the grave. It's also during this moment where she reveals that this was the first lesson which she ever got from him, which did make me wonder if Garen kept holding Nagi back as well. There is certainly evidence to suggest so, such as with Hypixie being a demon he had to give to her, rather than Nagi earning the demon through a grueling battle or something. She does get more stuff to do in the manga Raidou Kuzunoha versus the Lone Morabito, giving her the official ascension to Garen Kuzunoha the 18th after a fierce battle. While that part is fortunately translated, the rest of it not so much, which is a damn shame. But a lot of this stuff did cement Nagi as one of my favorite characters, and I hope to see more growth from her. If we ever get more games, which, let's face it, it's not looking likely. As for Narumi and Tei, while they are more involved in the story, I don't think of them as the super main focus. However, Tei is actually a massive step up from the previous game. While I did like her attitude there, she felt useless, mostly a damsel in distress. However, in this game, she's kind of the same, but more involved. Yay, feminism. Okay, but seriously, her being more active in the plot is a giant boost, especially as she shows more motivation and personal growth. She might be hungry for scoops and trying to make a name for herself, but by the end of the game, she realizes the Sukigata village kinda doesn't need other people to pester them after all this bullshit, so she shot down the story to protect them. Plus, she is vital in helping Raidou hunt down more information and even talking to some people, whether it be as a distraction or, in the case of a distressed chief of the village, snap his ass back in gear and be useful. It may not seem like much compared to other people, but it does demonstrate Tei is capable of things even Raidou can't do and is a valuable character within the game, even if she doesn't have a main starring role. Narumi, on the other hand, feels on the same level, and there's not too much to discuss compared to his last appearance. Both are overall good supporting characters that either maintain or increase their likability in this series. Also in the manga, Narumi does get more action and a cool fist bump moment. What I'm trying to say is, someone please translate the rest of this fricking manga. Finally, there's Raidou himself, and one can argue there is no development due to being a silent protagonist. But honestly, I'm not sold on that idea, though this is mainly just a theory. And it revolves around one thing added to this game: the alignment system. And it all comes back to the last game with Raidou Kuzunoha XL. If you recall the final dungeon, there were periods of time Raidou was able to see, so he would know the future is on a downward spiral. I'm sure the bombing of Hiroshima was already a giant red flag. Even if he did stop XL, I doubt anyone who saw how screwed the world would become could just stand there and take the news like it's his destiny. In the first game, there was kinda no need for choices to matter since there was only one obvious choice: stop Tokyo from being destroyed. Now though, things are much different, and other factors could also play into Raidou's decision, like with the Kuzunoha clan themselves. Raidou apparently had to part with his demons and be reduced back to level 1, and even being taken away from the capital, all to just prove his skills to people who want him to discard his name to serve the will of Yatagarasu. And you know, constantly weakening your summoners and just throwing them into a pit of demons, I'm suddenly starting to see why the numbers in Kuzunoha would rise so quickly. They probably died due to crap like this. And what does Gato do? He keeps calling the character by their real name. Combined with the curse he has of being a cat, I wouldn't be surprised if he has some beef with the clan, but only goes along with it since it's his only shot to defeat the demons. Angels aren't exactly doing anything anyway beyond being dicks either. So with the need to change the future and a cat that would likely go along with his plans to not always follow the rules, the neutral and chaos endings make much more sense, as they are the only ones giving you rewards. Hell, other characters are willing to call Raidou by his true name, and Raidou himself can even acknowledge the differences between the role of Raidou versus the role of a human being wielding the sword. This is evident when after Raidou learns about the truth of the marriage ritual, and Nagi asks him his feelings on the subject, it has the most alignment points to chaos should Raidou side more with Dahn's feelings, and say that is how he feels as a person over a devil summoner. This is even more evident in the final dungeon, where he's forced to choose between his role as Raidou and his role as a human being. One could argue that so long as the player wills it, Raidou can have more of a value for himself and his own beliefs, rather than just having someone tell him who to kill just because he has to. There is a good chance that XL ended up helping Raidou open his eyes more, or at least start the process, since the events here would have happened regardless of the stuff going on in the first title. The struggle between duty and one's own feelings is basically the alignment system in a nutshell, with duty representing law and chaos representing one's own feelings, and trying to keep a proper balance is ultimately ideal, aka trying to be the neutral alignment. However, since even neutral doesn't really have much of a story with its side quest, I'll stick to analyzing the chaos side, especially since the game is really biased with it, portraying it as the best option. Throughout the game, a blonde-haired man will appear before Raidou on multiple occasions, trying to point some things out and the spark that ignites some situations. And yes, the frequency of the word spark is very annoying. almost on the level of darkness used in Kingdom Hearts. This is Lucifer, and this is also a common occurrence through many other SMT games, besides some of the other spin-offs, as he will take some form and try to guide the player to his own wishes. Based on some of the other SMT titles I played, he was only antagonistic in Shin Megami Tensei 4 if you went against him, though some have argued he wasn't the true Lucifer. Again, I haven't played much of the SMT series to verify that. In such cases like with those other games, even if the player doesn't fully side with him, taking some competition will be just as good for the King of Hell, and he won't get in your way too much. His role is no different here, never really serving as a full-on antagonist in the story, yet during a flashback he's apparently responsible for putting the idea of King Abaddon in Dahn's head, thus helping to kickstart the events of the game. And it's easy to see why he does that when you challenge Lucifer in the series of quests. And no, I couldn't really be bothered to do it myself for the sake of saving time. The third battle oddly involves heading into the deepest parts of the Arcana corridors, right at the very spot Raidou and Exel had their final battle in the last game. There, Lucifer reveals his true goal, trying to get Raidou's help in changing the timeline, likely preventing a lot of events the original Shin Megami Tensei would have caused, like the destruction of Tokyo, and making things a bit more to his liking. Whether it is his will or the will of humans, I doubt he cares, especially given the neutral ending in Nocturne, where he didn't want to be Naoki's enemy and tried to warn him of the coming judgment by angels. The benefits of chaos here are far more easier to see than in Nocturne, teaming up with Lucifer to keep the angels from, say, reenacting situations like the first Shin Megami Tensei, like setting off all those nukes. By amplifying the other side and trying to keep some balance that way, or even making sure the angels are kept in check, you could argue Raidou can maintain the safety of the capital through that method. Funny how that idea works without destroying humanity like with Nocturne. And considering how Raidou acts within the manga of the Lone Morbido, I'd say he's more trying to use Lucifer for his own purposes and vice versa, as opposed to fully joining him. And this is kinda sorta confirmed in the Nocturne remake given the vague words of Gato. While he and Raidou are eager to find out what Lucifer is up to, he says they are going to do this for the future of the Imperial capital. And nowhere does it say they are doing this to help the Demi-Fiend's future return to normal, so it's likely the duo are just using him as well, especially as they try to avoid killing the half-demon. Since there's no other boss fight after this, like let's say if Naoki was helping Hikawa for example, it only makes that theory more likely. With all these examples, it really paints Raidou as a manipulator. After all, there are multiple timelines, and that's been proven both in the Raidou games and with Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse's DLC. One world's loss is one giant gain for another, and it's only hammered in more with the true demon ending, since after all, in that world, the cycle is dead and humanity is gone for good. There's no coming back from that, and Lucifer even said so. The angle of begrudgingly working alongside Lucifer makes more sense than Demi-Fiend actually, in the sense that he's using the demon for his own ends anyway. Let me put it this way. The Demi-Fiend was a high schooler who, while had some knowledge of the occult, technically never met demons until that fateful day, had to deal with the loss of his teacher, his friends backstabbing him, and had to endure many various levels of pain from many different demons. Raidou, on the other hand, was trained for this kind of thing, and they're both around the same age. He was trained for this given how he grew up in Kuzunoha village, a place meant to train the defenders of the capital. One is likely to be dealing with trauma and not thinking straight, along with being put on a dark path, so it's easier to see why he would choose the true demon ending and not really see much logic with it. And the other is far more likely to understand what is necessary to protect the world, understand what demons are the most dangerous, and has a helpful guide who never betrays him and tries not to be manipulated. Granted, this is all conjecture based on some of the evidence available to me and should not be taken as pure 100% fact, especially when talking about silent protagonists. There's a lot of other stuff I'm missing too, like more translated chapters of the Lone Morbido, case spells that were present in Nocturne that I lost the link to, and many more stuff. And since Persona is dominating the SMT series, it's unlikely we will ever get a third game to see what kind of future Raidou Kuzunoha has. I say it has about the same chances as, I don't know, Ash winning the Pokemon League. Well, I'm waiting, Atlus. So overall, how does Raidou Kuzunoha versus just get the bloody game? It's friggin' good and a much better game than the previous title, introducing a lot of elements I welcome with the biggest hug possible. Coupled with a fantastic story that gives us good characters and a strong theme, it's actually one of the better titles I have played from the SMT series, and I feel ashamed that I forgot about it. That being said, some elements don't quite work, as the combat could still use a bit more refining, the rewards for alignments require you to beat the game first, and the final battle can be annoying and highlights a very large flaw with the magnetite system. I could still easily recommend this game as anyone's first SMT title though, or just something to get into as the game does introduce the mechanics fairly well. Playing the first game is completely optional, so you do what you feel is best. Fortunately, you can find both games for cheap online, or if you have a PS3, you can just buy the titles up there, along with Nocturne and the Digital Devil Saga duology. And if you want more Devil Summoner goodness, there is a title called Soul Hackers on the 3DS that is a remake of an old game, and even features Raidou and his alternate universe self as extra bosses. Otherwise, that's a standalone title, and I still need to play more of it. There is also another Devil Summoner game that apparently started the spin-off series, but it still remains exclusive to Japan, with Sony blocking a localization due to lacking new content on the PSP. I heard there was a translation in the works, but I'm unsure if it's even still going. Speaking of spin-offs, I think you all know what's coming up next. Grab your dinner plates and your best silverware, for we are in for a meal of a lifetime with Digital Devil Saga.